Hi, welcome back to Storytime with Dad Booker. So today we're finishing up we're not finishing up the book. I haven't read the entire book by any means. I've read a lot of chapters that Steve has let me read. So this is the last chapter, chapter 19. I'm sorry to be kind of ending this one because I enjoyed this book so much. Um, I'll leave it's on Amazon. I have the link on here. So if you want to get your copy, get it quick. It is more fun than a lot of books that I've read, and I've read a lot. So this one's Wooden Wheels. Clayton Sneer watched the entire battle from his tiny cell window. His hands were bleeding from hitting and scraping at the dirty, decayed wooden door. His cellmate, a rat, scuttled down on the opposite side of the tiny room, poking around in dirt, rotten pieces of fruit, and rubbish deposited on the floor during years of neglect. Clayton Sneer was tough, but incredibly stupid. He couldn't be broken. He was far too thick for that. So he had spent his time in the cell screaming, shouting, and hitting walls, doors, and even the floor. The former team leader was well on his way to the fruit house. Talking of fruit, Barrie Bianchies had finally found what he was looking for in the galley. Slightly gone off bananas, sprouts, and a can of baked beans. After scoffing the lot, he made himself a coffee and relaxed in a chair by the window, watching the sun fight its way through the storm clouds. Occasionally, a spiral of dust fell from the ceiling, reminding him of the ongoing fight above his head. Unperturbed, he sipped his coffee, and 15 minutes later, Barrie Bianchies had another coffee. After he had finished it, the dregs of his second cup, a rumbling in his pants, indicated he was fueled up and ready to fart. He stood up, stretched, and made his way back up to the deck of the ship, creeping up behind the wall of pirates making their final stand. Spying Barrie, Derek acknowledged him with a subtle nod and then glanced over his shoulder. Zodiac, he said with a grin, where have you been? Zodiac held up his sword and smiled. Been unloading the bikes. They're ready when you are. Good thinking, but we have a slight problem with the remaining pirates. Zodiac looked across the desk and spotted Barrie in the beanpole. I see, but what is Barrie doing? He whispered, watching the blanky flamethrower clumsily sneaking up on the pirates. Derek looked over at his windy friend and frowned. Oh no, he whispered. Whatever's the matter, said Zodiac. An increasing look of disbelief spread across Derek's face. I believe the dirty bugger is about to reignite his flamethrower. Barrie Bianchies positioned himself just out of sight behind a barrel at the end of the line of pirates. Turning his back, he bent over and positioned his secret weapon. He caught Derek's eye and winked. Derek looked on him like a disapproving teacher. He would have sent him to the headmaster's office, but he knew Barry's arse was their only ticket they had for getting the team off the ship. As a match struck the side of a box, Team Cogs and Clocks turned and covered their faces. Fire in the hold! Barry screamed and grunted like Captain Crapper on steroids. The first two pirates had no chance. Instantly engulfed by the fireball, they took the brunt of the blaze of park fire. In desperation, they jumped overboard to extinguish their burning beards and clothes. The rest of the pirates, most with singed hair, scorched eyeballs, and blackened faces, regrouped. Charge at the dogs! Someone shouted, and the pirates advanced. Bernard was razor sharp with his Diablo, taking two of the sea dogs out as they skirted across the slippery deck. Here, Colin, put this back on, Derek said, offering his pal the cursed chef's hat. The cookery king slid the white hat on. As it tightened around his head, an uncontrollable rage welled within him. Colin held his French stick aloft, his ordinarily calm eyes burning with anger of 20 boiling chefs. Having calculated all the routes the pirates had left open, Austin signaled to Colin, and the two cyclists, with crazed eyes and frothing at the mouth, charged at the bandits looking for revenge. Colin had little control over his French sticks, but his blunt smash and move on tactic was working well, swiftly knocking out two pirates unconscious. Austin, thanks to his internal GPS, maneuvered in and out of the brigands without being sliced by a sword, disarming three of the pirates before making a tactical retreat, dragging the drooling Colin back to the safety of the team. Look, screamed Derek. There are only 8 of them left. Everybody, surround them. Team Cogs and Clocks, Zodiac, Copperfeather, and George encircled the remaining pirates. It's over, said Derek, holding back the snarling Colin by his collar. Is it now? Said a cocky individual with an eye patch and half an ear missing. Without a word of warning, Copperfeather struck the pirate hard in the face and whipped down a pair of handcuffs. Yes, he said sternly to the pirateer, it is. He turned to the remaining band of cutthroats, who glanced at one another and appeared to eye the exit. Does anyone else think it's not over? A sudden clatter of metal rang in the air as the pirates dropped their swords onto the deck. Good work, Administrator Feather. Thank you, Administrator Zodiac. Zodiac turned to Derek. You might want to remove Colin's hat. I don't think he realizes we've won. Above their heads, Colin was swinging from the rigging, his mouth foaming. Pumped up with cookery rage, the angry chef clung to the rope with one hand and only waved his concrete baguette in the other. He screamed something that made Derek tut and swooped down towards the deck, readying himself to clout the pirate on the head. Bernard, if you will be so kind, Derek said, nodding towards his cooking pal. Bernard stepped into Colin's flight path and stood solid. His broad shoulders twitched as he turned slightly and caught Colin by his legs as he swooped past, hauling him down onto the deck. Bernard held the rabid chef down, and Derek yanked off the offending hat. Are you okay, Colin? Said Derek, looking down at the bemused friend. Bloody hell, what just happened? I put the chef's hat back on your head, just for measures, my friend, but we won. My head is pounding. Everything goes a little hazy when I put that damn thing on. Derek smiled. Colin, the way you are swinging that French stick around, you look like a villain from a film about a war in the stars. You should be known from this point onwards as Darth Baker. Derek exploded into a fit of giggles. Darth Baker placed his head in his hands and groaned. A cry from the top of the wheelhouse shelter caught everyone's attention. Team Cogs and Clocks, Zodiac, Copperfeather, and Copper George, cried Red from above. It gives me great pleasure to show you my appreciation. The effort and courage you all displayed here today, without any doubt, exceptional, and I now believe we should be off. A sudden gust of wind blew across the deck, catching the ship's boom and projecting it forward. Bernard, the first to spot the impending outcome, loaded his Diablo and fired a ball bearing towards the wooden pole as everyone on the deck shouted, Reg, look out! Give me a drink, hold on. For the 100th time, my name is, and the boom struck Reg's head, knocking him off the wheelhouse and onto the deck. Everyone dashed towards where he lay, out for the count. A few minutes later, a groggy Reg slowly opened his eyes and stared up into blurry faces of Team Cogs and Clocks. Reg, are you all right? Said Derek. Reg squinted in the bright sunshine that had evaporated the clouds. A smile spread across his face, and he pursed his lips. Oh! It was the biggest howl Reg had ever done. Team Cogs and Clocks burst into laughter and slapped each other on the back. So glad you're back, Reg, Derek said. We missed you. Oh, did I go somewhere? You certainly did, my hairy friend. You certainly did, said Derek, his eyes widening. However, please humor me, Reg. Is my name Adam or Derek? Reg peered at Derek with a look of amusement and noted that everyone around him appeared to be holding their breath. Even Copperfeather and Copper George's mouths hung open. Well, they didn't have the slightest idea why. Reg smiled and gave another little howl. For some reason, it feels as if I haven't been myself. You haven't, Reg. Now, who am I? Reg turned towards Derek. Adam? A look of horror filled Derek's face. It's a really daft name. Derek's your real name. The money man's face turned from horror to jubilation. Reg, it's good to have you back. Team Cogs and Clocks, shouted Derek, straightening his back and puffing out his chest. Saddle up. It's time to ride. Within 10 minutes, Team Cogs and Clocks were cycling away from the docks, heading inland through the smart, tight alleyways of Mother's Landing. The small town was awash with spectators who, appearing like magic, had lined the streets once the fighting had ceased. Some of the onlookers visibly cringed with fear when the low-flying police escort appeared, descending into sheer panic when they realized who was piloting the lead coach. After the team had disappeared into the rolling countryside, and the town had once more resumed its gentle hum, Morris Hammer stirred in his man-sized crater and sat up, rubbing his temples. Turning his massive head up to the sky, he could just make out one of the flying stagecoaches as it shrank into nothing in the distance. In a sudden fit of rage, the huge enforcer rammed his hand into the ground, creating another mini crater. Running, the ex-bouncer pulled himself to his feet and staggered as he attempted to step out of his concrete bed. As the sun fired off its rays like a professional archer, the deafening sound of nothing was hard to ignore. The pirates had been silenced, dockhands had scattered when the fighting broke out, and the scene was now one of organized abandonment. Groggy and with a sore head, Morris dusted himself down. A voice broke the deep silence. Oi, you down there! The simmering anger in Morris etched up a notch when he spotted Clayton at the window of his cell on the LS Splinter. Let me out, will you? No. But Clayton kicked the wall of the wooden brig. Morris turned away from his former prisoner. His rage was becoming uncontrollable, and no number of cookery or pottery classes could calm him now. Walking along the dockside, he stepped in a large puddle. The dirty water splashed up onto his trouser leg. Looking down, Morris cursed and smashed a shovel fist-sized hole into an innocent wall. What would ye be doing now? Captain Tinfoil asked from the side of his ship. Dario the duck was sitting on the captain's shoulder with a bandage wrapped around his head. Quack! It was a nasty, loud, reproachful quack. Morris spun around and looked up. His stare was so severe it pierced the duck's consciousness. Dario's eyes rolled in his head and he waited and fell off the captain's shoulder. Hitting the deck with a thud, Morris turned to stare at the captain. It was evil and it held a hidden agenda. Captain Tinfoil glanced sidelong at Morris and looked away, clearing his throat. Pursuit is my only option, said Morris. The huge henchman turned and disappeared into a nearby boat shed, leaving the two oversized double doors open. From the little window in his cell, Clayton watched Morris throw objects around in a fit of rage. Captain Tinfoil grunted, picked up Dario, and went back to helping his defeated groaning crew. After another 15 minutes of watching equipment fly through the air, Clayton shouted, I can help you. Morris turned his back and continued whilst he tossed equipment over his shoulder. Having skin as thick as Rhino's ass, Clayton shouted again, Listen, you idiot, there's enough equipment in that boat shed to make a bike. Morris stopped dead in his tracks, threw down a piece of wood he had been looking under, and lumbered out of the boat shed. Despite his large frame, Morris bounded up the LS Splitter's gangplank. Clayton gulped. He had finally pushed Morris too far, and he now fully understood the concept of real fear. Something loosened and dropped into his shorts. The door to his cell burst open, and fear grabbed him by his throat and held him up against the wall. Who are you calling an idiot? Morris hissed, his huge hand almost around Clayton's neck. Clayton struggled to answer. All he could do was choke. I see you are struggling to breathe. What a shame, Morris continued, a nasty glint flashing in his eyes. Clayton spun his hands in a circular movement and pointed at the boat shed. Morris followed his fingers and looked back into Clayton's fleeting, bloodshot eyes. He relaxed a little and threw Clayton across the room. On all fours, Clayton coughed and wheezed like an old man, gasping for air and shoveling it in by the bucket load. Why should I spare you? Morris growled. Can you build me a bike? Clayton nodded as he fell backwards and rested against the foot of the wall, spluttering. Well, we have work to do then, said Morris, and without any warning, he dragged Clayton like a rag doll out of the cell and threw him into the boat shed. Get to work. It was a command, not a request, and it had I spared your life written all over it. Picking himself up, Clayton began foraging around the shed, and located the extended wooden bike frame he had seen from his cell window, and attached the two wooden wheels that were stored in a corner. The person that owned the shed must have been a joiner and dedicated cyclist. It was a catalog of equipment everywhere, and almost everything was made of wood. Morris looked on with a frown. Why are there two holes on the top of the frame? Clayton turned and picked up two seats. It's a tandem. Oh, and who else is coming with me? Well, I thought that was rather obvious, Clayton snapped. Now fully recovered, Morris cracked a knuckle. You, he asked, are not coming. Clayton suppressed his disability of controlling his rage and shook with anger. Well, if I do not accompany you, Team All the Gear has no chance of winning. The rules state that every cyclist must cross the finish line for the team to qualify. Yeah, indeed they do. But I don't care. But I can help pedal and we'll go faster, Clayton said, grasping at straws. Morris scratched his huge head. If he was not to catch the peloton, he would need help. Reluctantly, Morris nodded and pushed his massive round face into Clayton's and whispered very slowly, if you do not pedal, I will break your legs. Now get this thing ready now. Clayton blinked with horror as Morris's message appeared to finally break through his thick skull. 15 minutes later, Clayton had attached the wooden seats, pedals, and handlebar. The only metal thing on the tandem was the chain, brakes, and derailleur. Even the cogs were wooden. Let's go, Morris grunted. And like a dodgy act at how some low-key variety show, the duo wobbled and shouted at each other as they attempted to coordinate their balance with power. Morris sat at the back, the frame strained under his weight as his tree trunk legs powered the rear wheel. After falling off 3 times, they finally got the hang of it. Clayton steered them out of Mother Landing at a respectable 25 miles an hour. The final stage of the Tour de Ledge was a flat 40-mile run back to Mother City, followed by a further 15 miles to the finish line at the top of Mother Mountain. Team All the Gear led the race, closely followed by Team Lipsticks and Shoes. Buck Watt was fuming. He had hoped for a decent lead before they began to climb Mother Mountain, where he knew he would struggle. Starlet and Misty led the chasing pack. Should we not have helped Team Cogs and Clocks, said Misty. Starlet frowned. Her beauty disguised it, ironing out the creases in her forehead. Maybe, but I'm sure they would have preferred us to get out of danger. Yeah, I guess you're right. However, Starlet's eyes lit up. Copperfeather was with them. Misty giggled at the mention of his name. He has an effect on people, said Starlet, realizing Misty was fond of him. Run 10 miles further back, Derek was cycling at the rear of his team, a huge grin on his face. Reg was back and the team was his again. A howl resonated in the air, followed by a woohoo! I'm back at my bike. Derek's mouth was like a happy sun, a smile spreading from ear to ear. He eyed Darth Baker, who had just opened up his refrigeration tray and was cutting up an apple. Austin and Bernard cycled side by side, talking about the pirates. Barrie farted, the team rolled through a glorious countryside. Overgrown meadows sailed by as the team tinkered with their gears for every sharp climb. Averaging around 20 miles an hour, they pushed on towards Mother City, with the last climb of the race of Mother's Mountain. Up above, Copperfeather adjusted his goggles and scarf and gave Derek a very enthusiastic thumbs up, momentarily causing him to lose control, and the stagecoach veered violently toward left, then right. Zodiac, who'd been trailing at the back, settled up to Derek. You know, it's nice to be back on the road. Certainly is, said Derek, still smiling. See Roger's back to his normal self, howling and whatnot. Derek laughed. You know, I never thought I would say this, but I really missed his howling. Zodiac nodded. He gave up trying to fathom Reg. He was just too odd. Team Cogs and Clocks plowed on, riding as a team. Someone would lead the pack for a while, dropping back when he was tired, and the next in line would take the straight. They actually looked like they knew what they were doing, which for Team Cogs and Clocks was nothing short of a miracle. The countryside was pleasing to the eye. The sun shone its hot rays onto their backs, causing Colin to complain when the heat melted his butter. They passed through a couple of villages. They had made an effort to welcome them, with banners and streamers and whistles as they zipped through. With only 10 miles to go until they reached Mother City, the looming spike of Mother's Mountain came into view. Long way up, Barrie said, pointing out the obvious and noting the clouds near the top. Could be cold and wet up there. I don't like the cold or wet. Zodiac smiled. Barrie, I'm sure Mother Nature will see to it that the weather is favorable for you. Whoo! Do think she will lay on a buffet with a couple of sheep to hunt? Reg, you just never know. Woo! I can't wait to climb that monster, Sam said, excited like a kid on Christmas morning. Bernard and Austin carried on cycling in silence, as did Darth Baker, while rolling out some pastry. Zodiac did a double take and was about to ask where he kept his ingredients when there was a shout from Derek. Zodiac, look behind us! Zodiac spun his head around and squinted. Over the brow of the hill, about 2 miles behind, on the very straight road, a strange object had appeared. Oh dear. Why, who is it? Derek asked. Not who is it. Who are they? There's 2 of them. Really? Derek said. Oh yeah, I see them now. Can't be that big dude, can it? Zodiac nodded. Who's the other one? Yeah, I'm guessing it's Clayton. Oh dear. Zodiac shouted up towards the low-flying stagecoach. Copperfeather! Copperfeather, who had been nodding off, jolted upwards, knocking the flight stick and setting the stagecoach into a dive. It struck the ground and sparks showered the team as he pulled on the flight stick and leveled out. Sorry! Zodiac glared at Copperfeather. Listen, we have company. We think it's Morris Hammer and someone else. Can you and George delay them? Yes, sir. Command accepted. Come on, George. And the 2 stagecoachers peeled away and from the team, marching in a lazy semicircle back towards the strange object. We're gaining on them, Clayton puffed, sweat pouring off his head. Faster, Morris commanded, channeling the burning rage within him and funneling it through his legs. I can't go any faster. Faster, damn it! Lane dug into whatever reserves he had left as Morris upped the pace. Even in his shirt, tie, and henchman's suit, which still looked neat, Morris didn't appear to be struggling or sweating. What's that? Clayton screamed as the 2 low-flying stagecoaches bugged past their heads. Targets, cried Morris, pulling out a couple of fist-sized rocks from his pocket and launching them at the unbelievable velocity at his unwanted guess. Copperfeather was quick to dodge the incoming missiles, but not quick enough. The sheer brutality of the throw smashing a door clean off its hinges. George wasn't so lucky. Rocket smashed into his engine and he was going down. Dense black smoke billowed from the rear of the stagecoach as it made its final descent. Crash on the road, block it, and I will pick you up, said Copperfeather. George acknowledged the command and expertly crashed his stagecoach onto the smooth tarmac where the road dipped and grassy banks stopped, with tall trees overlooking the carriageway. Copperfeather circled above, and once George was clear, He dropped a lit torch, igniting the carriage below. As George ran along the road, Copperfeather dropped the knotted rope to his colleague, who grabbed it, his feet swinging in the air as Copperfeather pulled on the lever and the rope coiled upwards through an open panel beneath the stagecoach. After being deposited inside, George climbed down and onto the flight deck. Thanks. No problem. That should delay them for a short while. But before either of them could say fancy a cuppa, a piece of burning wood from the down stagecoach thumped into the underside of the stagecoach. What was that? George screamed. I don't know, but we're on fire, said Copperfeather, fighting with the flight stick. Look over there, George yelled and pointed towards the burning wreckage. I don't believe it. The two police officers watched with horror as the distinct figures of Morris walked through the flames and launched a second lump of burning wood at the carriage. Hold on, the bold copper screamed and pulled up hard on the yoke. Well, that's it. That's oh man. That's all we got. That's the last chapter we're going to read from this, I'm sorry to say. I'm going to miss it. So, anyways, that's it for The Ledge Creation, Toward the Ledge by Steve Wolf. The next book we're going to be reading is, where can I put this? I'll put it here. Is book 3 of Sheriff in a Small Town, the new sheriff. So that's it. That's it for today. The next reading will be on Tuesday next week at 10 o'clock. I'm going to put a listing on Facebook, and that will list all the days that we'll be doing a reading. So we'll just have one thing over there, and then I'll do a whole bunch of these so that we can have them listed and say what's coming up next. So that's it. I'm glad you were here. I hope you enjoyed hearing this book. Like I said, if you do enjoy this book, then get your copy. It's a lot of fun and well worth getting. Even if you get the ebook, get it. Just get it. So that's it for today. I appreciate you being here. I look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Be good and be good to yourself. See you on Tuesday. Bye.